jury trial remains alive and well in the First Circuit.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Whitehouse. Senator Grassley.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you, Senator.
I want to get at how you might look at interpreting a statute generally, not a specific statute, but more importantly, in that the extent to which legislative history might play a role and when it would play that role in your decision making.
So I think the Supreme Court, I think, has said, to the extent it has any role, I think it's certainly a secondary role. So let me answer the question. I think as you asked it originally more broadly, I think it's clear under the Supreme Court precedent that you begin with the text. If the text is clear, you end there. There's then a whole series, if the text is ambiguous, there's no precedent on point, you look to a whole series of things. But I think you start with the statute as a whole. You look to statutes that are in pari materia with that statute. You look at canons of construction, clear statement rules. And I think some kinds of legislative history can have some purpose, such as committee reports. What I would say about that is, I think bad statutory interpretation is what I would call cherry picking, when someone just says, well, here's a quote from legislative history that I like, or a dictionary definition that I like, and then that's the answer to the problem. I think good statutory construction is a broad, if the statute's ambiguous and you're beyond the text, is looking at all of those things together to do the best you can to predict, to determine what Congress meant and what the president meant when they signed the law. That's the goal. And I think that it's all of these sources together in really being cognizant in your own mind, you're not engaging in that cherry picking that I don't think is good statutory interpretation.
Now, I don't want you to get too deep into judicial activism on one hand or judicial restraint on the other hand, but within that globe, do you believe that a judge should ever consider his or her own values or policy preferences when determining what the law means or what the case outcome should be? If so, under what circumstances?
No, I think certainly as a court of appeals judge, we are a court of error correction, and we are supposed to do our level best to apply the law as the Supreme Court has pronounced it. And what the First Circuit says about that is not just the narrow holdings, but the considered dicta of the Supreme Court. And that means the goal is not just to apply narrow holdings, but to figure out what the Supreme Court has said and do our level best to apply that in the broadest way to the cases before us. That has nothing to do with my personal beliefs about any topic.
What about your own life experiences? I mean, you're X number of ages now, and you've been practicing law for a long time and all that sort of thing. Is there anything in your life experiences that might influence that process?
I hope it gives me the skills to do the job well. I hope I have the temperament and the patience and the academic ability and the empathy and thoughtfulness to do a good job. But it's not that my opinions matter. What matters is that I'm doing my level best with the skills and temperament that I've developed to try to predict the law and apply it as best as I can.
What are your views on something that's very dear to me that I never get legislation passed on, but sometime I hope to? What are your views on cameras in the courtroom?
You know, so first of all, I think that that is a policy decision ultimately. I've never had that experience, so I've heard myself in oral argument after, but that's to the extent. So I think one of the things that's discussed is how would that affect lawyers' behaviors in the courtroom, the trial court. I've just never had it, so I don't know if it would affect my behavior in any negative or positive way, but I know it's an issue that's out there and is discussed.
What do you believe are the most important attributes for an appellate court judge, and whether or not you possess them? Do you have attributes along that line, you feel like?
I hope so. So I think they are fairness, fidelity, and clarity. So I think fairness is what you, I think, expect from any judge, which is to be open-minded, curious, thoughtful, respectful of the litigants, give it your all. I think that's the fairness component. Fidelity is sticking to that record and sticking to the precedent and what I described in my earlier answer to you about how you go about doing the job of figuring out what the law is and how to apply it. And clarity, the goal at the end of the day, right, is to write an opinion. And I want that opinion to be clear to litigants, and I want it to be clear to lawyers and judges and the bar in the community, because I think we have an obligation to explain to people what we're doing, why we're doing it in a transparent way. I hope in my appellate work that I've been doing since 2010, over 100 times before the First Circuit, I've been able to develop those skills. Certainly before Judge Howard, as a law clerk, I also had practice in those things, and I feel like I'm ready to bring them to the First Circuit, and if I'm lucky to be confirmed, I'll give it my best.
I'd like to end with a comment, if I could, about his suggesting that I was 10 years in the Senate when he was a page. You don't have to comment on this, but I hope that I told you what I tell pages today. You know, we've got this, I don't think it's a rule, I just think somebody decided that no page should ever talk to a senator unless the senator talks to them first. And I think that's a stupid rule. And so I tell every group of interns, you can talk to me anytime you want to, because you're here to learn, and if you can learn anything from Chuck Grassley, I'd like to depart it to you, and I hope I told your group that.
Well, I'll say I learned a lot, and it changed my life. So thank you, Senator.
And I've been blessed with the Grassley wisdom for so many years.